Welcome to We the People Live, the discussion show for planet Earth. I am Josh Zepps. Some of you may remember an interview that I did on HuffPost Live a couple of years ago, wherein I was defending Stephen Colbert's right to satirize racists. And there was actually a third human being in that interview. If you watch the video, you see him at the beginning and you see him at the end. A kindly, bearded, portly journalist by the name of Jason Linkins, who joins me now. He's the editor of Eat the Press, which is the Huffington Post's commentary and criticism about politics and the media and culture. And he has a piece this week in HuffPost that he wrote along with Howard Feynman and Lauren Weber entitled Why Hillary Lost, a Premature Obituary, and it's subtitled The Blame Game Has Already Begun. Here's where Democrats will point the finger if she loses. I thought it was amusing, and I thought we should check in on what the hell is going on in Hillary land. Jason, thanks for being on We the People.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here at the end of all things.
Yeah, why is it the end of all things? It sounds ominous. You frightened me.
I don't mean to frighten anyone. It's the polls are getting tight. There's a dark stench on the wind.
Yes. For people who don't like Trump, it's potentially the end of days, is what you're saying.
Certainly, yes. I was just telling someone a few minutes ago that I'd always sort of planned my life I always sort of thought that I would die of natural causes maybe 20 years before everything went to shit. And I feel these days like someone moved up the schedule on me.
So what is happening? Because I've got a CBS News poll here from September 18th, which is Sunday. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton tied across battleground states. It looks according to the New York Times, like the potentially sometime double-digit lead that she had earlier in the year is now 44 to 42. I think we saw her speaking about the recent terrorist attacks in New York and New Jersey on her plane, and she looked extremely tired. There was the footage of her collapsing last week as she was, she's got pneumonia. Is that what is playing into this, and can I regard it as being temporary? What the hell has happened to her campaign?
It's a really good question. One of the things that, people like me always try to look for during any kind of election is that kind of sort of wisdom that comes from people who have taken a deep study of politics, political scientists, and that kind of thing. And we're used to being able to say, hey, here are some norms that should adhere throughout the process. Here are some fundamentals that should adhere throughout the process. But I feel like we're in one of those elections where everything that we've ever written about politics and the way it works can be kind of thrown in the dumpster. And one of those things that the political scientists often talk about is that after your political conventions, if you get a couple weeks out and the polls seem consistent, that's your story. But Clinton has seen a large post-convention bounce erode. And as near as anyone can explain it to me, it's almost as if right now, if you're in the news as a presidential candidate, people don't like you. And so we've just come through a week where Hillary Clinton had to leave the September 11th memorial. And I was skeptical about whether health concerns would be a big deal in this race. Turns out they are. Turns out polls indicate that people are worried about this. I don't, my instincts tell me that perhaps this is something easily sloughed off, but
why do you say that? Because I must say I've always thought that like the rumor mill about how she secretly has a brain injury or something, and if you go down the rabbit hole of the dark web far enough, then you find slow motion videos of her cackling, and it's like only people with brain damage laugh this way. And obviously that's all bullshit. But when I saw the image of her being led away from the 9/11 memorial and essentially collapsing into the Secret Service's arms, I was like, well, this would not be enough to get me to back Trump. But it would be enough to make me look really carefully at Tim Kaine and figure out whether or not I think he would be a good president, because maybe that's partly who I'm voting for. And I don't think you'd have to be crazy to be immensely frustrated at how overworked she's allowed herself to become to presumably precipitate whatever illness she now has. and B, her campaign's infuriating. Like, one thing that John Dickerson over at CBS always says, and I'm sure that you and Howard say it as well, is that when something bad happens to your campaign, it's so much worse if it already plays into a narrative that people have about your weaknesses, right? And if the image of her is that she's conniving and manipulative and phony and she's inauthentic, then why the fuck does she insist on hiding her pneumonia until the very last minute? Why does the press not tell? Why is the press not told by her campaign for 90 minutes after she collapses what the hell that was all about? Why don't they get ahead of this stuff and say, FYI, she's got pneumonia, she's on antibiotics, she's going to rest up, she'll appear at the 9/11 thing, but she's going to be under the weather. I feel like these are all sort of own goals. These are all self-inflicted wounds.
I think that you're dealing with, first of all, a candidate who has a lengthy past in Washington and working with the media, and her sort of baseline assumption is that she's not going to be treated fairly. Now, the problem there is that when you've just made that your baseline assumption, and I feel like her candidate ignores the fact that it's a completely different generation that's out there on the trail covering her, and that she has an open opportunity to forge new relationships and doesn't. But I think that what's baked into the cake in their decision-making process is they walk around thinking that no matter what we do, the media is going to find some way to screw with us, so we're going to give them as little as possible. And my thoughts on this whole pneumonia scare is it's really kind of a bit of overthinking. I feel like the rational thing to do would have been to say, as soon as you knew you're sick or had pneumonia, you're just forthright about it. You say, I've got pneumonia. I'm not going to be able to make this event. I look forward to being back out on the campaign trail. I've got to take care of myself. It makes the most sense for my campaign, the American people. There'll be other people speaking on my behalf for a few days. I'm going to get some rest. Rest assured that nothing terrible beyond that's happening. Just forthrightness. And here's the thing, that forthrightness would counter the narrative that she's always secretive and hiding things. Maybe she would take a hit. Maybe someone would say, what's up with Hillary Clinton? But the forthrightness on its own would probably speak for itself. And I just feel like probably this campaign got up into their heads and started overthinking it and talking about the way it could pitch, and maybe you can cheat this a little bit. Maybe you can show up and everything will be fine. Maybe we don't ever have to mention you have pneumonia. And somewhere just the simple task of keeping the public informed about what's going on was lost way in the back. Way in the back.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think that the question of like her campaign's paranoia becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because if all you see, and they're right that if they had released a statement saying that Hillary has pneumonia and she's not going to make the 9/11 memorial service, then there would be a certain cohort of Americans who would think that there's something deeply nefarious going on and that this is proof that she's unable to lead and she's not fit for office. The right-wing media would say that. But what they're ignoring, what her campaign is ignoring, is the sort of winnable middle. Like, not everyone responds exactly the same way. You and I would not respond to that news exactly the same way that Bill O'Reilly would respond to that news, which is not the same way that the New York Times would respond to that news. You know, they're by not giving anyone in America the benefit of the doubt, they're actually creating the scenario that they blame the media for creating. In other words, a scenario in which they are perceived as being control freaks and secretive and manipulative. Like, meet us halfway, for Christ's sake. Like, give us a bit of information, and yes, you will get knocked by the knockers, but maybe there are various concentric circles of people in America, some of whom are more reasonable than others, and you're not letting us show our reasonableness.
You could have easily avoided this being a constant conversation on, say, Dayside CNN or Dayside.
Yeah, why are we talking about it on my podcast? This isn't the stuff that I want to be talking about. But if we want to have a logical analysis of where the campaign is going, then now all of a sudden we have to, because Hillary forces us to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and it forces a defense. It also, it's an opportunity cost. You are out there and you're working for Hillary Clinton on the campaign. You're going to have to defend her on certain things. And you're also going to have to sort of defend her policies as being better than Donald Trump's. If you only have so many hours in a day to say good things about Hillary Clinton, and you're on her campaign, and you're having to spend so much of that time talking about pneumonia, then you're losing all the ground you could be gaining on offense. So it's really, really, I think, short-sighted. This is an issue that could have been very easily moved past. And if they'd moved past it easily, some people in the fever swamps would have still talked about it. But the reaction to everyone not in the fever swamps would have been, tut-tut. Those people, they're always like that. Instead of, they have a point this time. And that's the kind of thing you don't want. Campaigns are a game of winning on opportunities. And if you're spending too much time doing stuff you don't want to be doing, you're losing.
Have you seen, by the way, the ad in which Hillary's ad in which she runs the clip of Donald Trump criticizing McCain for being captured as a POW, and then it cuts to an actual World War II prisoner of war who is explaining his experiences and crying?
I have heard that on the television in the background behind me at the office.
Okay, I won't ask you about it then, but I've been engaged in Twitter wars with people because I find it really unseemly and tacky and overtly manipulative, and I feel like it's taking something. Yeah, Trump is full of gaffes and full of nasty, crass quips, and it was kind of a shitty thing for him to say about a war hero, but to take that out of context and imply that this is somehow going to be the basis of his administration's policy towards World War II veterans just because he made a joke about John McCain getting caught, I just find not only is it below the belt, but it's also just unconvincing. Like a good ad for me is an ad that uses exaggeration in order to double down on an actual flaw. But I don't think anyone truly believes that Donald Trump thinks that war heroes aren't war heroes. Like, you know what I mean?
You know what's crazy about talking about that comment he made about John McCain right now in September 2016 of an election year is that these are comments he made almost a year ago, and he got away scot-free with making them. So it's not everyone had the chance to lay a glove on him after he made this comment, and no one did.
Well, but there was a big hoo-ha, wasn't there? I mean, I think I recall everyone getting their tits in a tangle at the time. But yeah, you're right that then it went away. I don't know why you bring it back now, especially since McCain was his primary opponent. I mean, he was trying to slander a political opponent. He wasn't trying to make an intellectual policy point.
And it's weird that the Clinton campaign thinks, what I need to do is I need to go after Donald Trump for what he said about someone who most of America understands as like an elite, affluent political celebrity. You know what John McCain's best defense against slander is? The fact that he's rich and is not going to have an unhappy day in his life. Okay? So we don't need Hillary Clinton doesn't need to fight Donald Trump on that hill. That's crazy. That's insane. Because either you agree that Donald Trump was right to criticize John McCain, or you don't. But it has no salience among the larger electorate who are voting on what's my economic situation? What do I think we should be doing as a country? What's the vision of going forward? What do I think about brown people and what do I think about Donald Trump's message about they're always criminals? There's nothing about John McCain that speaks to any of those issues that could wedge someone away from their preconceived notions of what these two candidates are like.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, I think either you've already, if you're contemplating voting for Trump, then you already forgive his crass jokes. Right, so you are not going to be. I understand what the Hillary campaign is thinking. They're thinking let's go after establishment pro-military Republicans. Let's go after the kind of Bob Dole, George H.W. Bush cohort, and there will be certain traditional Middle American military type families who will be really off-put if we remind them that Trump is cavalier when it comes to the sacrifice that our armed services make. But if you're going to do that, just show what Trump is saying and then just cut to a words on the screen that say "fit to lead?" ? Or something. To go down a rabbit hole of trying to draw this long bow with a World War II veteran who was captured and he's now crying, and it's so. Like, if I was if I put myself in the mind of an upstanding, like military, traditional establishment Republican person who feels that they can't vote for Trump and is contemplating staying home or possibly even voting for Hillary or Gary Johnson, I can't believe that they're going to watch that and not feel totally manipulated by a woman who they don't care for, who is obviously laying on the violins and the tears to try to look more jingoistic and more pro-military than she actually is.
Here's something I kind of hate this about politics, because as someone who spent 7 years in college and grad school writing and like proving arguments and doing academic work, what appeals to me is obviously substance. But in politics, it's too bad it's this way, but in politics, you have to think about what you're doing with voters as if you're taking a walk in the park with them and having a conversation. And the longer a walk in the park you have to take with a voter, the less chance you're going to be able to persuade or even relate to that person. And to me, you're right. You talk about the John McCain incident as being of a piece of his unfitness to lead, his temperament, his impulsiveness, and how all those things sort of are uncharacteristic of the type of people we want to be president. To take it a step further and ask so much of the voters to like make this other kind of esoteric connection is too long a walk in the park, man. It's too long a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, the walk in the park. Yeah, it's like, yeah. He said this one thing on a whim a year ago. Ergo, look what he would think about someone who's a World War II hero. Like, I can't cross that bridge. Let's talk about your piece, Why Hillary Lost. One of the things that you say in it is that if Donald Trump wins, then the people who lost the battle are never going to admit that it was Hillary Clinton's fault, right? They'll say it has nothing to do with transparency or her lack of transparency. It'll have nothing to do with the fact that she called half of Trump supporters deplorables last week. It'll have nothing to do with the fact that she backed the Iraq war, or at least voted for the resolution that gave Bush the authority to launch the Iraq war. It'll have nothing to do with the fact that, I like that you put it this way, the simple fact that middle-of-the-road Clintonism ran out of gas as a public philosophy. So they're going to blame other groups and forces, and you list 10 of them. Well, no, 9 of them. The top of which is the media. That Trump's going to blame the media, Gary Johnson will blame the media, Jill Stein will blame the media. The media will ask, wait, which one was Jill Stein? Do you think the media is being culpable in this? And in what way, if so?
When we sat down to write this first to last column, we sort of put ourselves in the head. A presidential loss is a failure that has many fathers, and so we put ourselves in the head of those people who on the Democratic side and on the Clinton campaign side are going to be those anonymous people in Politico after the fact, and try to imagine what they would be saying. And it's just obviously sort of a baseline assumption that when anything goes wrong in politics, the first thing you do is you blame the media. That's just sort of reflexive. Now, to the extent that the media is culpable, that is a really tough discussion. And to a lot of people's credit, it's being had. I think that obviously from Clinton's point of view, there are things that Trump has been able to successfully do that rankle her. Of those things, there are a few that matter and a few that don't. One of the things we always talk about is the extent to which Trump has always been able to get himself on cable news television. He'll phone in, they'll cover his rallies, and a lot of critics of the media and Clinton defenders say, well, that's like X amount of dollars worth of coverage. That's free media. The number everyone sort of cites is $2 billion. They've been citing that since April. Presumably, there's been some compound interest on top of that.
But Jason, does anyone doubt that if Hillary Clinton called in as much as he does, that they would not put her on? I mean, of course they would. They would put her on too. I mean, he chooses to call in.
She should try it. She's very reticent to put herself in front of people. And here's the thing: by now, everyone's heard the criticism. You always let them call in, so chances are they won't try to even the score. The things that I think Hillary maybe has a genuine anger about, And just to go back, the $2 million worth of media coverage that Trump got, it also drove up his negatives. So everyone who has a bad opinion about Donald Trump right now has it because of all those times he was on TV. Now, the things that Clinton has, I think, a legit grievance for is, take this example last week. Donald Trump says, I'm going to do a major speech on early childhood care and paternal and family leave and that kind of stuff. And everyone freaks out, and they cover it on every network, this long speech about child and family leave, and they spend an hour talking about it. And they even let Trump and Trump surrogates say that Hillary Clinton doesn't have a plan. Hillary Clinton not only has a plan, she's been out there talking about the plan, and she formulated the plan a long time ago, but it didn't receive this kind of coverage. No one is like, hey, you check it out. Hillary Clinton's has got this maternity leave plan, this family leave plan. We should evaluate. We should talk about its pros and cons.
Is that because, Jason, is that because she is not celebrating it with enough fanfare? Is it because the media has higher expectations of her, and all of the journalists think, well, of course she's got a bloody plan. I mean, she's Hillary Clinton, but look at Trump's plan. He's actually doing something. It's like a baby who just started to walk. What is it?